Sports media so often gets caught up in flash, stats, hyperbole, and tools, and they always overlook winning plays, culture building, documented improvement over the summer, and the most important trait for becoming a superstar, creating in the late shot clock. I also love watching interviews from players as well. Of course, players put on a face for the media, but each interview gives you a window into their mentality. I love watching to see which players are transparent in interviews about things they need to work on. They shift praise towards their teammates, and they handle defeat with class but with a pissed off look in their eye. Also, if they reference things like playing for God, family, and for the love of the game, over things like playing for money and fame, I think that really stands out. I agree with the principle of not getting shorted by greedy owners on your contracts, but there's also a reason Tim Duncan and Tom Brady were winning so much taking team-friendly deals, so that's another factor as well. In the NBA currently, LeBron James and Steph Curry have been the faces of the league for over a decade. Personally, I don't feel either one really shifted the culture of the league into necessarily a better place, but they do generate a lot of news. But as both of their careers wind down, I think many of us are excited to see the new wave of stars. But I also think many of us are excited to see teams who have built through player development, like the Thunder and Pacers, who have balled out in the playoffs this year, as their chemistry is palpable through the screen and in the interviews. It's fun to see that camaraderie. As hopefully with the current CBA and teams seeing the success of these two teams, more teams shift towards development and building with their young talent, as opposed to always chasing a trade for a star. If you're a GM in the NBA right now, please look at which strategy worked better. The Sixers and Suns assembling 3-star super teams, or the Pacers, Thunder, and the Rockets. Alright, let's get into it. So here's a generalization of my thought process. For each player I talk about, I will discuss what traits I've seen with them that I believe really make them special and poised for a breakout. Really only a few I'm basing off only talent. Most of them, I watch and research a lot of college basketball, so a lot of these guys, I like what I see from them as far as improvement in work ethic and interviews over their first couple years, especially their improvement over their collegiate careers. So I know on a lot of these teams, you guys are going to be up in arms about why was so-and-so left out. So basically, if I haven't seen winning plays from them, a lot of these guys put up empty stats and aren't contributing to winning. I'll get into Cade and LaMelo in a minute, but they illustrate this perfectly. So some prominent players, I know you guys want to discuss that I left out, I'll cover them briefly and explain why I left them out. So the way I'm going to do it is we're going to go over each team in the Eastern Conference first, and then the Western Conference. I'm going to list 1, players with breakout star potential, 2, players with breakout superstar potential, and then I'm going to talk about players that I'm high on, but I don't think they'll become stars, because of either their height or because they were drafted low and I don't think teams will give them the run to prove it. And then at the end I will have a list of players who I feel have the potential to have the biggest jump in the next 3 years, that I was extremely impressed with their potential this year. Just a quick disclaimer about my terms. When I say star, I mean the player has a reasonable probability of being a third-team All-NBA or higher caliber player, which there was 15 of those this year, and being the first or second best player on a playoff team. When I say superstar player, I mean the player has a reasonable probability of being a third-team All-NBA or higher and being the best player on a second-round or farther playoff team. Some of you reserve superstar for only the 3 to 5 MVP candidate level players, but I think if you're one of the 15 best in the world at something and you're leading a team in winning, you're a superstar. But I just wanted to clarify my criteria before some of you think I'm crazy. Alright, the first team we have is the Boston Celtics. With nobody. I thought about Luke Garnett. I like his game, but I don't think he'll ever get the playing time. I think they'll look outside the organization to replace Al Horford when he retires. I think the Celtics window is officially closed as well, so sorry Celtics fans. But you do have a good front office that's always a good starting place, and I do like Jaylen Brown, of course. The next team we have with a relatively bright future is the Brooklyn Nets. They have good ownership, a relatively new stadium, and they were smart to rebuild after that Big 3 debacle. They have a ton of cap space as well, with the most coming up this year. So first up for them, as a player I'm high on that has a potential to be a star, is Cam Johnson. I love his mentality. He's always been a humble guy willing to do the dirty work when he was on the Suns. He's a great defender and has turned himself into a great shooter. The next step I'm hoping to see from him is to work on his handle and footwork to become a 25 point per game scorer in Brooklyn, because the shots are certainly available and they really need to find franchise players, and I think he can become that. but I don't have him capable of superstardom, so I think they're going to need someone else to find in the draft. The next player on the Nets is Keon Johnson. This is one of the guys where I haven't really seen the winning intangibles yet, so this is based off more of just ridiculous potential with his athleticism. I haven't seen anywhere near enough shooting from him yet, but the athleticism is there, and if he works on his shot, you could never know. He could become a star, but that's really where I see him. I don't see any superstar potential. He has potential to get a lot of usage next year, so if he puts in the work this summer, he could potentially be a second option for Cam Johnson. I like D'Anthony Melton's game a lot too, but he's too injury prone and short to be a star, but I think he can be a starter for them next year if he stays healthy. The next team is the New York Knicks, with also nobody. Sorry, Knicks fans. I really like McBride, but I think if Jalen Brunson went down with an injury, McBride would be more than capable of putting up 18 points a game and 6 assists with good defense, but because he's behind such a good starting five, I don't think he's ever going to get enough minutes to truly develop. If he ever leaves the Knicks, then you never know. Next, we have the Philadelphia 76ers. Now, as we all know, their franchise was a hot mess this year. Now, if I'm the GM, I'm trading Paul George for anybody that's willing to take his albatross of a contract, which is probably nobody. And I'm trying to trade Joel Embiid to a team like the Nets for a first-round pick. But I'm guessing they end up having to keep both and try to run it back with better health, which I don't think will end up happening, unfortunately. The first player I'm high on is Quentin Grimes. I think he could potentially be a second star to Tyrese Maxey. Obviously, their ceiling would be low because I don't think Quentin Grimes can become a superstar, but I love his mentality. After getting traded twice, he's balled out in limited minutes everywhere he's gone. And once he got big time minutes this year, he put up big stats. He's shown great flashes of defense and being able to shoot well. The second guy I'm high on to take the superstar leap in the next year or two is, of course, Tyrese Maxey. So he's a perfect example of what I'm trying to show you guys in this video. He's everything you would look for. He has all the criteria. I love his mentality and positive energy every interview he's in, and you can see it on the floor. He's worked hard to improve his game every year coming out of Kentucky. He's dealt with 3 high drama and or injury prone stars in James Harden, Embiid, and Paul George, and he didn't let it drag him down. He kept improving. And the thing that impressed me the most is I don't mind Embiid being injured, that happens, but some of the stuff that Embiid and Paul George are doing while injured drives me nuts. And I was fired up to hear the report that Maxey called out Embiid for being late all the time while injured, and it shows the respect Embiid has for him now that he listened. Some of you are going to ask where Jared McCain's at. He went to high school 20 minutes from me in SoCal. He seems like a good guy with all the social media stuff, but I don't see him improving much more than the 20-point efforts he put up this year. I think he has the potential to be an excellent 6th man on a really good team, but I think a lot of that was putting up shots on a bad team. He's just a bit undersized. The next team is the Toronto Raptors. I'm sorry, if you're a Raptors fan, they really have to hit in this draft. Scotty Barnes is very borderline for me. I do love his skill set and size, but I just haven't seen the winning intangible plays and the taking over of games I want to see on this leaderless young team. RJ Barrett is a bucket at times, but come on, Scotty, this should be your team. So I'm sorry, Raptors fans, I don't see superstar or even star with Scotty Barnes. I just see a very good player. He could potentially be like the 3rd option on a championship team. I like Grady Dick, but I don't see the explosiveness needed to be a star. His ceiling is more like Gordon Hayward-esque. I'm high on Jacoby Walter, but I don't see much basketball IQ his rookie year, but of course his skill is very high. Raptors fans, you are somewhat in that 9th seed purgatory the Kings have been in for years. Never the number 1 pick, but never making the playoffs. Hopefully you guys can hit on this year's draft and find that star. Next, we have the Chicago Bulls. I know the team's stuck in that 9th seed purgatory every year, but I do have really good news for you Bulls fans. You nailed last year's draft. Matas Buzelis is the first player I will discuss later in my list of players who can make the biggest jump in the next 3 years. I saw special traits from him last year, and I think it showed with him not being a top 5 pick, but he was getting some big minutes in the second half. He has a good mentality in the interviews I've seen. He clearly doesn't really care about the drama, he just loves ball. And he has size, athleticism, and a good shot form he can build on. He also showed me something, but really improving from that Ignite year to his rookie year. I think the sky's the limit for him. I think he'll end up a star, not a superstar, but he for sure does have superstar potential if we see more winning intangibles from him and basketball IQ as he gets older. The other Bulls player on my list is Jalen Smith. He is so often overlooked. Every time he plays, he makes an impact and he puts up great stats per 38 minutes. Here's his stats. I think the Bulls should turn over the team to Matas and Jalen in a year or two and try to package Vooch or Kobe White for some picks or a second star for Matas. Some of you may want Giddey on this list, but I think his production for the Bulls at the end of last year was his ceiling. He did improve a lot, but it was a bad team, and I think his ceiling is 28-7 with only average defense, so he could potentially be a third star if they are able to develop Matas. Next is the Cleveland Cavaliers. They are obviously loaded as hell, so I only have two players who I think will break out, and I think one will break out with them and one will break out with a different team. The first is DeAndre Hunter, who showed me a lot last year. I loved him out of the draft, and then I was very disappointed with his first couple years in Atlanta. But this last offseason, he clearly put in the work on his ball handling and shooting, and he came back confident as hell. There was multiple games I watched where he was giving buckets to people and talking trash, looking nothing like the subpar corner three-point shooter we saw his first few years. I would love to see him sign with a team like the Nets or Raptors like we just talked about and get 18 shots a game and see what he can do. This is going to be controversial, but I have him down as superstar potential as a late bloomer. Obviously, like I said, to reach that, he'll have to show way more winning intangibles. But the talent is there, and I finally saw the mentality I thought he would have coming out of Virginia. I think he'll probably end up being just a star, but still. The second player is Jalen Tyson. I really liked his game at Cal, and I think he earned a shot at the Cavs' 6th or 7th man spot next year. And I think he'll get that shot because they can't afford to pay Ty Jerome and Hunter. And next is a team I'm most fired up to talk about, the Detroit Pistons. This team is tied for the second most players I've set for a breakout with 3. The first is Jaden Ivey. I was extremely high on him coming out of Purdue, and he disappointed me a bit his first year with poor efficiency. But man, this year before he got injured, he improved drastically. Cade is a force field, and he really needed someone else to help him create off the ball this year. And the first half of the year, Jaden finally helped him do that. I think he has superstar potential for sure. I think he was probably only become a star because of his height. But I love the interviews, the athleticism, and fun fact, his mom was also a bucket in her own basketball career. The next player I love for a breakout is Jalen Duren. What I love about him is he hasn't necessarily improved his numbers that much over the years, but the little winning plays he's making on screens and help defense was a huge reason for Detroit's turnaround this year. If he can become a taller version of Bam Adebayo and develop a jump shot, we're looking at a bona fide star. And lastly, of course, the man who was a bona fide star this year, who I absolutely love, is Cade Cunningham.
Yeah, we're not 2-26 bad. You know what I mean? Like, no way are we that bad. So yes, I think we can turn it around. I think we can play a lot better brand of basketball than we're playing right now.
This man came into the second worst run organization in the league after the Kings and endured nightmares and injuries his first couple years. But they've got a new front office now, and they've hit on the last 4 high draft picks, and I think he's the MVP of the league in 2 years. His mentality in interviews is great. He wants to be the best player in the league, and I'm sorry guys, if you see a team that has the type of turnaround that they've had, you have to look at the leader. He was a huge part of that, and I have them being the 3rd seed in the East next year behind the Cavs and the Pacers. And I probably see them winning a title in the next 5 years.
Cade is a really good communicator. He really likes to communicate. Him being the leader of this team, that's kind of what his role is. He knows how to talk to every single player. You can't really talk to everybody the same, but he knows how to get to everybody in the team.
Where do you feel like you stand with what you want to accomplish in this league?
I want to be the best player in the world. That's every day, you know what I'm saying? That's what my phone tells me every day, is best player in the world, you know what I'm saying? So that's the only thing I'm striving for, and having the best team in the world. Playoffs is going to determine a lot, and so that's why I'm just excited and looking forward to these series and getting this thing rolling and waking people up as far as what is in Detroit and the type of respect that we deserve.
Shout out Ron Holland and Isaiah Thompson as well. They're both way too raw to predict anything, but they're high ceilings as defensive wings for sure. The next team is the Indiana Pacers. Obviously, they've thoroughly impressed us all these last 2 years, and they have a great young core. There's 2 players I want to highlight, and the first is Aaron Nesmith. This man has great athleticism, his underlying metrics are great, he's been a great shooter since he's been in the league, and he plays great defense on J-Dub and Jalen Brunson in their run to the finals. Indiana's so loaded, if he stays with them, I don't think he'll get the usage to become a star, but I think he has star potential for sure. The second player is Benedict Mathurin. I'm only going to go star potential because there's clearly something mercurial about him in Rick Carlisle's eyes because his playing time is such a roller coaster. But I see big game mentality from him, and he won Indiana Game 3 of the finals for sure. Also shout out Johnny Furphy. I think as a wild card, he could be good in the future. The next team is the Milwaukee Bucks. And I'm sorry to say, Bucks fans, your GM has either traded away or missed on pretty much every first round pick since Giannis, leaving your team thoroughly in no man's land. Seeing as how I don't think any free agent will sign in Milwaukee, I honestly think you have to trade Giannis for 12 first round picks and a young up and coming star. Sorry guys. The next team coming in at number 1 with 4 breakout candidates is the Atlanta Hawks. Now quickly to their GM, please trade Trae Young for a top tier 3 and D player and a first round draft pick, and you'll make the Eastern Conference Finals in 2 years. I'm sure they won't do it. They'll keep Trae and they'll continue to hinder the growth of their young players, but who knows? I'm sorry, if you actually watch the Hawks games, Trae Young is a high usage, low efficiency, 35-foot 3-jacking defensive liability. Now, on to the good news for Hawks fans. First up is the Great Barrier thief, Dyson Daniels, who you literally stole from the Pelicans, who didn't know how to develop him. Next year, I think he's a prime Ben Simmons with work ethic and a willingness to work on his 3 with a slightly less passing ability. If he ever becomes a better ball handler and maybe like a 38-point three-point shooter, he's a perennial all-star. Next up is the jewel of this team, Jalen Johnson. Please, Hawks, build around this man. Jalen Johnson worked hard on his game, and he was the Hawks' best player in half of their games this year before he got hurt. Same with him, he worked on his shot a lot since being at Duke. It took a little bit of a step back this year, but if he can work on his three-point shooting a bit more, you're looking at a superstar. Next is Onyeka Okongwu. I've been extremely high on him since the Chino Hills days, playing 1v5 defense every game with the Ball brothers cherry picking. The only thing that's really frustrated me this year with the Hawks, they weren't a championship caliber team, but they were still giving Capella his minutes the first half of the year. The second thing that pisses me off is that Okongwu is actually a great shooter, but they haven't really featured that part of his game. So when Capella was injured, he really started to shine. Last, of course, is Zachary Risarche. This draft class got hated on, but I see star potential for sure. I don't see superstar potential like you'd want to see from a number 1 pick, but when he got hot from 3 this year, he carried them to a couple of wins. I like to see him hit the weight room this offseason and work on his handle, but he showed me character, improving as the season went on, despite all the 2024 draft class's trash talk. Please, Atlanta, build around these 4 and move on from Trae Young. Next up is the Charlotte Hornets. If you're a Hornets fan, I've got some good news and some bad news for you. The only one I have primed for a breakout is Brandon Miller. I wasn't thoroughly impressed with his interviews and controversies at Alabama, but I was impressed with his big game mentality in college. This Hornets team has been starved for a leader since Kemba Walker, and I don't see that leadership from Brandon, so I have him only as star potential. Now as for LaMelo Ball, obviously the story is great with the Ball brothers and LaMelo is immensely talented, but I'm sorry. He scores 20, they lose by 15. He scores 38, they lose by 15. When you watch the games, you don't see the winning intangibles. In his defense, he joined a team with no leaders, but I'm sorry Hornets fans, I don't see him perennially leading playoff charges. Now the good news is, the way the lottery shook out, I think personally VJ Edgecombe is the second highest superstar potential in the draft after Cooper Flag, and you're projected to pick him, so hopefully you get him. The next team is the Miami Heat. Next year is going to be very interesting for them. It'd be great if they could sign Kuminga and in a weird way complete the Butler trade finally. The first player is Jaime Jaquez. Something was going on behind the scenes last year with him. I'm assuming it was an injury, but you don't really know. He kind of fell out of the rotation for a few weeks. But I loved what I saw his first year, and I think he has borderline star potential with increased usage next year. The second player is Nikola Jovic. Sorry if I butchered that name. I think he has star potential for them for sure. I see kind of a Lauri Markkanen potential for him. The next one is Davion Mitchell. After his great but short playoff performance, I've always loved the nickname Off Night, and I love this dunk. And I love his mentality on defense. So shout out Kel'el Ware as well. He's pretty mercurial, up and down performances, but he has high potential. The next team is the Orlando Magic. This is another team in purgatory, guys, I'm sorry. Not really hitting on the Jalen Suggs pick or the Jonathan Isaac pick kind of held them back. Those are good players, but they needed more from them. I think Paulo has reached his ceiling. He's very good, but he's not superstar to me. He does everything well, but he can't take over games enough against good defense. The only player I have on their list is Franz Wagner. I have huge respect for his improvement from Michigan up until last year. He was never projected as an ISO stud coming out of college, but he's worked on his handle and three-point shot off the dribble a ton, and he took over a lot of games for them last year. If they are able to get out of this purgatory, I think he needs to be the superstar and Paulo the star, but they've missed on too many draft picks, and I don't see it happening. And the last team and the worst team from the East, the Wizards. Another team famous for whiffing in the draft, or if they do find some talent, like Rui Hachimura and Denny Avdija, they traded away. They do, however, come in with 3 players on my list, which is pretty good. Unfortunately, none of them have superstar potential, and they didn't get lucky with the ping pong balls not getting Cooper Flag, or they rigged it for Nico Harrison. The first player is Bub Carrington. I have him as star potential. I see really good instincts and the potential to be a 20.8 assist guy. I also really like his improvement from Pittsburgh in college. The second who I also see as star potential is Bilal Coulibaly. I see great mentality despite being on terrible teams. He always competes, and at 6'8" and 20 years old, he's still so young. With him, it's all about the shot. If he can get anywhere near 40% from 3, I think he'll be a star. The last one is, of course, Alex Sarr. I only see star potential, but a very good star. I don't see the feel for the game that he needs to be a superstar, but I see everything else. And if he continues to work on his footwork and three-point shot, he could be a poor man's Joel Embiid, which is still very good. Like Reece Shea, I also thought he handled the draft bus talk very well. He just kept his head down and kept improving. Shout out to Kaishan George. He didn't make the list and his shot needs work, but he's got some potential. Like a lot of these bad teams, so many young players, somebody needs to step up and be the leader. The first team for the West is the Denver Nuggets. Sorry Denver fans, but because of your recent success, you haven't had many high draft picks. But you do have one player on the list, and that is Christian Braun. He has improved drastically from the player he was at Kansas. He was essentially just a 3-and-D 8th man off the bench for the Nuggets championship run. But this year, I saw a huge improvement in his confidence in the offense. Granted, playing with Jokic can make anybody explode, but I was most impressed with his basketball IQ. He was always in the right place. I think he has a legitimate shot to be the Nuggets' second best player if Jamal Murray ever moved on. He shot an absurd 58% from the field for a guard, which again is Jokic force field inflated, but still impressive. The next team is my highest rated potential team from the West. Now this is going to be controversial, but to beat OKC and San Antonio over the next 3 to 5 years, I'm sorry, but the Wolves have to move on from Julius Randle and let the guys on this list all get a shot at being Minnesota's second star. Julius is a beast, but as Chris Finch and his staff discovered when looking closely at the tape against OKC, he's kind of a one-man show on offense at times, and he kind of disrupts their flow. If his shot's off, he doesn't provide enough defensively to make up for it. So first up, the man probably the most underrated on this whole list of players is Jalen Clark. He's most underrated because he tore his ACL before his draft year, but I watched a lot of UCLA and his defense was always outstanding. And this year, in the middle of the year, he finally got playing time for the Wolves, and the Wolves absolutely thrived when he was on the court. I think he's just short of star potential because we associate star potential with a lot of offense. But I think he could end up being the best 3-and-D guy in the league. Think Lou Dort, but less physical but better foot speed. The next player is Jaden McDaniels. Now Jaden was told his first 2 years in Minnesota, we got Ant, Cat, and Julius just focused on defense and hitting threes. So that's of course what he worked on. But for the Wolves to catch OKC, they need him to really become that second star. He needs to work on his handle and add 10 pounds of muscle for his drives. If he can give them 2+ games or so of 25 points in the playoffs in a 7-game series, they can be a special team. I think he has the mentality and the talent to do it, but he's got to believe he's a star and not just a third option. The last player who is also underrated, but clearly not by Chris Finch, is Terrence Shannon Jr. I watched this man a lot at Illinois, and he's an extremely skilled scorer. A lot of players, when you watch them in college, they're just scoring easy points from fast breaks and threes. But this guy, he was a true 3-level scorer, and he has fundamentals and skill. Obviously, he fell in the draft due to some allegations, but man, clearly the Wolves coaching staff is high on him also. He got a lot of minutes in these playoffs for a rookie. I have him down as star potential, but again, low draft picks tend not to be given as many chances, and he's behind 4 or 5 other guys in their offensive pecking order. So we'll see if he ever gets the chance, but it was a good sign in the playoffs. But please, Mini GM, Move on from Randall and turn this team over to these 3 young guys and see if you guys can catch OKC. The next team on this list is the NBA finalist, the OKC Thunder. The first player is the most obvious, Jalen Williams. He has been pretty inconsistent in these playoffs, but he's young. I think he has superstar potential. I love the interviews, he's very humble, but I hope he doesn't try to take a backseat to Shea in the future because I think he can be almost as good. He's got a great shooting stroke, his handle has improved a lot, and his wingspan is crazy. I see a lot of basketball IQ with his great passing, but he has gotten out of rhythm a lot in these playoffs with 6 or 7 possessions where these OKC plays where they just have Shai bring the ball up and he makes 0 passes and they end the shot clock, he shoots a shot. The next player is also obvious, Chet Holmgren. I was a huge fan of him at Minnehaha High School in Minnesota. His rim protection technique has always been elite. He for sure has superstar potential with great mentality. I only think he'll become a star, not a superstar, but the potential's there. The only thing with him is I think he has chosen the wrong playstyle, and probably because of Shai, they've asked him to always be on the perimeter. I think he needs to fill out his body and be more of an Anthony Davis than a Kristaps Porzingis. He needs to play more of like a 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 split of inside, pick and roll, and threes to keep defenses honest. Too often he just becomes a spot-up shooter. So far in the finals, Miles Turner has made him irrelevant. He's really got to hit the weight room. The last 2 players I'll touch on quickly that I have as high potential, but only as starters, is Ajay Mitchell and Cason Wallace. I think both have the potential to be starters on playoff teams, with Mitchell being more of a lefty Patty Mills, and Cason being more of a better shooting Patrick Beverley. The next team on the list, who, like the Wizards, are young and leaderless, are the Portland Trail Blazers. They have so damn many young players, they don't know who to build a team around. The first one they should definitely build around is Denny Avdija. Now, I think he only has star potential, not superstar, but I think he can be the 2nd or 3rd best player on a top playoff team, and that's a good start. He's got good size, a good feel for the game, and can shoot. The next one is Toumani Camara. The offense isn't quite there yet, but like Jalen Clark, I see him as potentially being an elite 3-and-D guy if he can work on his shot. The last one is the crown jewel of this team in my opinion, and that is Shaedon Sharpe. He has definitely fallen victim to the whole which of the 8 high draft picks are we giving the ball to tonight roulette in Portland. But he has superstar potential for sure. I haven't seen the leadership and winning intangibles yet, but there's always players where the talent is so big, you hope they wake up one day and just realize I'm him and they start leading. He just needs to work on his basketball IQ and shot selection first and foremost. But he's still very young, he could definitely do it. If some of you are wondering why I didn't include Scoot Henderson, he almost made the list. I really liked his improvement in his shooting the second half, but I need to see more basketball IQ and more shooting. The next team on this list is probably the team second most lost in the wilderness on this list after the Wizards. They've tried really hard to rebuild, but injuries and ping pong balls have not gone their way. They have 2 players in this list though, and that's the Utah Jazz coming in with Isaiah Collier. He has an unteachable skill, and that's elite quickness. The man clearly had 0 issues with NBA quickness when he started some games the second half, and was getting into the paint at will. I only have him as star potential though because I don't see elite basketball IQ, and the ability to change speeds hasn't quite been there, and the 3-point shot also has not been there. But the crown jewel of this team in my opinion is still Taylor Hendricks. Now, he has had a really unfortunate injury last year, but 6'9" guys that can shoot don't grow on trees. I think he has superstar potential, and with the dearth of talent at Utah, he will get all the playing time he can handle once he's back in shape. I like his mentality in interviews, and I love the no fear he had when he was at UCF in college going against bigger schools. So I'm hopeful for you poor Jazz fans, he can do it. The next team up is the Golden State Warriors, with nobody. Sorry Golden State, you guys had 2 chances in your down years to find a star to extend Curry's window, and you took James Wiseman and Jonathan Kuminga. Now to be fair to Kuminga, I'm very high on him, but his growth has been severely stunted playing with this team. Clearly him and Steve Kerr don't see eye to eye, and he really screwed Golden State by absolutely balling out against the Wolves after Curry went down. Now some team will offer him a big deal, maybe the Nets, and the Warriors will have to match it or lose him. I have Kuminga and right below star potential, and he's already a great role player, so I don't have him on the list. I also really like Moses Moody and Quentin Post, but I think they will also be stuck on Golden State and not get the usage rate to shine. The next team is the Los Angeles Clippers, also with nobody. They're kind of in purgatory as well, but more so from injuries than bad drafting. I think this year was probably their last chance to win with Kawhi, and James Harden as a second star just is not it for the playoffs. And I also think they will probably run it back next year with the same team, which is a mistake. I love their team, but only as a semifinal or max conference final team, and their window is closing. The next team is the Los Angeles Lakers. They only have one player who I think has star potential, and that is Dalton Connect. I see a taller, higher basketball IQ version of Tyler Hero. But to reach star status, he will have to work on his defense. He said all the right things after the trade was rescinded, but that would affect any of us, so it remains to be seen what he thinks. If LeBron retires and he grows into a third option, we could see it happen, but to me, I see LeBron sticking around until Bryce comes out, so we'll see. Many of you are probably wondering if I'll have Bron in here, and the answer is absolutely not. I would never know what low effort, lost garbage I was watching from him the first 2 to 3 months, compared to the completely different player I saw in the G League the second half. But maybe deep down he knew he didn't earn those NBA minutes and felt more comfortable in playing in the G League. But I'm sorry, I can't forgive the low effort I witnessed. I don't see star or starter potential, but he could be a poor man's Cason Wallace if he actually starts playing better defense. The next team up is the disastrous Phoenix Suns. This will probably be an off-season video perhaps, but this is a classic case of a spoiled rich owner coming in and trying to implement things he saw watching as a fan in 2012. He completely screwed the Suns organization and put his faith in three extremely mercurial stars who have never had a track record of being leaders. If this team traded their big three for Mikal Bridges and Cam Johnson before the start of this year and replayed the year, I think they would have had the same record if not even slightly better. Now for their one player on this list, Oso Ighodaro. I liked his game in college and he had a great rookie year. I see some solid footwork in the post and on the pick and roll, and a good feel for the game. I think he has high-end starter potential, just below star. Phoenix, you got screwed by 2 consecutive bad owners, but hey, at least this one is very rich and he kind of half apologized, so hopefully he learned his lesson and turns it around for you guys. The next team is the Sacramento Kings. Probably the third most wilderness-esque team on this list after the Wizards and the Jazz. The Kings only have one player on this list, but I do have him on my list, and that is Keon Ellis. Now, he only has elite 3 and D potential in my mind. I don't see the handles or IQ to become a star, but elite 3 and D is a good first building block for the Kings as they re-enter into another weird half rebuild but from the 5th to 12th pick era. Keegan Murray should be on this list, but he's on a team that badly needed him to be the third star before Fox left, and he didn't do enough. Kings fans, I'm so sorry. At least you got to play a playoff series last year. The next team on this list is the Dallas Mavericks. This team is going to be really, really good in the second half next year if everyone's healthy, which they probably won't be. But the first player is Max Christie. He has a great shooting stroke, he's got a long wingspan that can really bother people on defense, his confidence grew a lot, and now he's not fighting for minutes quite as hard as he was in LA. I probably have him just as an elite 3 and D player with the high usage rate that AD, Kyrie, and Cooper Flag will have, but if he works on his handle, I think he has some star potential. The next player is Jaden Hardy. I liked what I saw from him driving some offense, and I have him as just below star potential, but he has that creativity you can't teach, and if he works on his 3-point shot and shot selection, he can be the heir apparent to Kyrie in 2 to 3 years. The next team on this list is the Houston Rockets. These guys are a very young team, so you'd think there would be a lot that would be on this list, but I only have 2 on my list, and the first is Alperen Sengun. I think he has superstar potential for sure. There's only one big in the league with his skill set, and that's Jokic. The only 3 things separating Sengun from superstar status are better 3-point shooting, consistently taking over games in the fourth, and playing better on-ball defense. He has a good mentality in interviews, but you can tell he sees himself as just a very good player and not the leader and the dog on this team. And for them to win a championship, that needs to change. Fred VanVleet is an OG, but he can't be your fourth quarter guy every game at 5'11". The second player who is the heart and soul of this team is Amen Thompson. He for sure has superstar potential. There's definitely a high variance here with his shooting being so underdeveloped yet, but if he works on his handle and shooting, he could for sure be a poor man's Kawhi Leonard. But Kawhi was a much better shooter than Amen coming into the league, so he's got a long way to go. Quickly on Reed Shepherd and Jabari Smith, I didn't include them because I don't see the high basketball IQ or the improvement over the year that I wanted to see. And my guy Jalen Green, he's very young, crazy potential, but I would trade him. build a team around Şengün and try to trade Jalen Green for an elite 3-and-D guy. To me, he showed us who he really was with his IQ in the playoffs, and I'd build around Şengün and Amen Thompson instead. Shout out Cam Whitmore and Tari Eason, I like their games a lot, they just didn't make the list. The next team is the Memphis Grizzlies, another team I see in kind of a purgatory state. They've drafted and developed very well though, but in my opinion, they really needed Triple J to be the superstar and John Desmond Bane to be the second and third stars. The GM honestly played himself with all this Taylor Jenkins drama. If you guys want to read about that story, it's somewhere on ESPN. But the first player who I think they may struggle to keep but is on this list is Santi Aldama. I loved his improvement last year when they really needed it, and I see his ceiling as a very good starter. The next player is Jalen Wells. I love his story from small college to third in Rookie of the Year voting. I think he has elite 3-and-D potential. Shout out as well to Scottie Pippen Jr., who really blossomed this year, and fan favorite Yuki Kawamura, who gives all the short kings out there hope to make the NBA. Next up is the New Orleans Pelicans. These guys had a nightmare of a year with the injuries and the trade of Brandon Ingram, but I'm very high on the Pelicans for next year. I think they can rebound and make the playoffs. Zion didn't miss a beat coming back from injury, but has he finally put it together, or will he be back at McDonald's this offseason? Now, the reason I'm extremely high on this team isn't just Zion, but the man replacing Ingram's usage in the offense, and that is Trey Murphy III. I think he has superstar potential. He's great in interviews, and he's improved a lot every year. For him, it's about continuing to improve on his efficiency and work on becoming a 3-level scorer, because I'm sorry he shoots way too many threes. But it wouldn't shock me at all if he puts up 25, 8, and 5 next year on close to 50, 40, 90 splits. Shout out to Herb Jones, Makovich, and Evis Missy. They didn't make the list, but they've got some potential for sure. And the last team on this list, the San Antonio Spurs. Their two players are obvious, and it's Stephen Castle and Victor Wembanyama. I think Pop was driven crazy with the Sacramento Kings style of drafting they were doing post-Kawhi, with a bunch of just young, inefficient wings. But finally they found two gems and some luck at the ping pong balls. The first needed no discovering, and that's the legendary Victor Wembanyama. I'm not nearly as high on Wemby as some of the hyperbole lovers in the mainstream media, but I do think he can be the best player on a championship team in 1 to 2 years. But like Chet Holmgren, I think he is being miscast with his playstyle. Continue to put on the muscle and become more like AD, a post beast, a pick and roll player, and a floor spacer if needed. But to me, he falls in love with the 3 too much, and you can't just jack up threes in the playoffs and win. You need to be able to take over fourth quarters with diverse scoring. The second player is of course Stephen Castle, the Rookie of the Year. I don't see superstar, because I don't see a good feel for shooting. But I do see everything else, and if he ever develops a 38% three-point shot, I see star. If he develops, they could have a beautiful situation brewing here in San Antonio. They could have a beautiful 3 to 4 year run with this team, and then when everyone becomes too expensive, move on from De'Aaron Fox and Dylan Harper can take over. This team to me has the best potential, just above Minnesota, to compete with OKC in the West for the next 6 to 8 years. So that's all the teams. Let's talk about the players who I'm really high on, who I feel have the most breakout potential in the next 3 years. So this is not necessarily who I think will be the best, but those who will have the most improvement relative to their current role. This is the list. Matas, I see huge potential. I have him as star potential, borderline superstar potential. Aaron Nesmith, I have him as star potential, probably only if he goes to a different team though. Dyson Daniels, I have him as star potential. Jalen Johnson, I have him as superstar potential if he gets a great 3-point shot. Onyeka Okongwu, I have him as star potential. Nikola Jovic, I have him as star potential. Jalen Clark, I have him as the best 3-and-D player in the league potential. Terrence Shannon Jr., I have him as star potential. Jaden McDaniels, I have him as star potential. Jalen Williams, I have him as superstar potential. Danny Avdija, I have him as star potential. Taylor Hendricks, I have him as superstar potential. Trey Murphy III, I have him as superstar potential. Keon Ellis, I have him as elite 3-and-D potential. And DeAndre Hunter, I have him as superstar potential. I think that's for sure my most controversial one, but I really love the mentality I saw last year. You can see some players when they worked really hard in an offseason, they come back confident as hell and believing in the work they put in. And I really saw that with DeAndre. So those are my biggest risers over the next 3 years. Let me know in the comments which ones you agree or disagree. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you're a Wizards or a Jazz fan, I'm sorry, but hang in there. Eventually you will hit on some of these players. Please let me know in the comments which players you agree with or disagree with in terms of their breakout potential. Much love to you guys. Peace.